Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Profitable Psychic Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Quick from the Profitable Psychic Business Academy at www.theprofitablepsychic.com. And this is where I teach tarot readers and psychic advisors how to scale their spiritual business, like psychic reading, tarot readers, astrologers, how to scale your psychic reading business to six-figure success. And today we have a special guest. And honestly, we've been trying to plan this it's taken a long time to get this on the schedule, but I'm so glad that we're finally here. I mean, we were talking about this like since last year, right?
Long time coming.
Long time coming. So I have Renee Lynn. You probably know her from the community. If you are in the Facebook community, she's no stranger there. She has also been in the 12 Days of Christmas. Were you in the 12 Days of Christmas Summit, right?
I was, yeah.
You did,
yeah. Talking
and
about
so you're going to
shoppers.
be in the next one this summer, which we have coming up here pretty soon. Renee is a pretty awesome person. She has an amazing amount of experience in so many different areas, and she's such a wise soul. So I'm really glad that she's here. She identifies herself as an intuitive creatrix, which I think is really, really perfect because she's so artistic and she's so talented. I have seen some like renditions that she has done of like portraits and other marketing material she has done in the past, and I've seen that privately, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you are so talented. You're just incredibly artistic, and it's just amazing how you have this ability, because a lot of people don't have this ability, but you have this ability to visualize and then actually bring it forth like on a piece of paper, and that's just like a really incredible skill.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
So, but you're not just an artist. You are an artist at heart, but you're actually more than an artist. You are a professional creatrix, right? And so you like to help people. Where you're really excelling and helping people is during times of personal and professional crisis and transition, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I could say about creativity is I define it by being able to identify patterns that maybe other people aren't seeing, right? And sometimes we're so close to ourselves, we're not able to take a real look in the mirror. So yeah, my job is to help someone reflect. It's like, you need to fix yourself up. I'll hold the mirror, hon.
And that's something you say a lot to me is thank you for being a mirror. And I totally understand that, because you're right. It is so hard, especially as professional psychics, right? It's so difficult to read ourselves. A lot of people struggle with that. And they struggle with like being able to apply the information is really difficult too. But it's like funny because we don't have any problem reading other people and telling other people what to do and what it looks like. But seeing ourselves is a little bit more difficult. But you now you're focusing a lot more on helping people find their divine life purpose and their own personal brand, like how they want to show up in the world, right? And so you kind of focus on helping empower people with these tools that these spiritual tools, but also the experience and wisdom that you've cultivated over this exceptional life that you've lived. And you really focus on self-healing. That's like a really big part of it, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, we all trip and fall. We all crash and burn. And I think that's why I, really am attracted to that phoenix symbol, from mythology, etc. Because, we all have to rise from the ashes and learn to fly again. So having that background in media and branding in the Muggle world, it just was a natural step as I started to notice, our friends in the more magical world, etc. It's just like, well, we all have stories to tell, right? And just figuring out, what are the cornerstones? What are the foundations of what you have to offer? And I don't know. I think we both have a talent for being able to see, like I said, those patterns that other folks aren't seeing.
And speaking of storytelling, you've actually studied with some really cool people. Like, for example, most of us know Joseph Campbell. And what exactly is he famous for again?
Well, gosh, I discovered Joseph Campbell when I think I was on punishment in high school. It's like there were only 3 channels and then there was PBS, right?
Right.
So we have to watch PBS. But The Power of Myth came on with Bill
I still
Moyers.
watch PBS.
I love it. I really do. Antiques Roadshow. Hello. Um, but, he wrote this book called The Power of Myth. He also wrote The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And I got
Mhm.
really into his work and this idea that there really only are about 7 stories, right?
Yeah.
7
Mhm.
comedies and dramas.
Yeah, we
And
actually talk about that in the program that you graduated from. That was one of the things that I hit on too. And so when you started talking about how you're familiar with all of that, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And actually, a lot of tarot readers, psychic people are familiar with this, even if they're not familiar with this, right?
the
Like,
hero's journey.
yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
think we're all familiar with the hero's journey because it's an underlying structure, a narrative structure that we see in our films, like, Star Wars, The Karate
yeah.
Kid, etc. So I was
Didn't
blessed.
didn't what's his name? George Lucas, didn't he say that he basically, well, he bought the script, but didn't he say that he basically based it off of the hero's journey?
That's right. There's
Yeah.
there's all these stages in the journey where there's like this call, and then as ourselves we refuse this call. It's like you see this in a lot of scripts. Oh, this big thing's happening, and you have to go attend to it. Well, I don't
Mhm.
want to. So there's these stages that we go through, and yeah, I was blessed to have a professor of mythology who was Joseph Campbell's personal assistant, and this is a fella named Jonathan Young, who you might see on Ancient Aliens and several of the
Oh,
shows on
yes.
TLC.
Yes,
So
my
yeah,
husband's obsessed with Ancient
yeah.
Aliens. Yes.
Jonathan Young,
Absolutely.
was my mythology guy in my grad school program. Yeah.
That's really cool. And you've also worked, or not worked, but like studied with some other really interesting people too, like some people that have been on some TV shows or movies that a lot of us are familiar with. Well, a lot of us know The Secret. That's the big one. That's the law of attraction one. And then What the Bleep Do We Know? That's one my husband introduced me to, like, probably, I would say 15, 14 years ago. And it has that, isn't it that one where the deaf
Marlee
actress?
Matlin. Marlee
Yes,
Matlin.
I
Yep.
adore her.
Yeah,
I
she's great.
love her so much. Anything she's in, it's really great. But that's a really, really good one. And for a minute there, I think it was on Netflix. I'm not sure where you can find it now, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere. But it's a really good one if you really are into like psycho spiritual, like thought documentaries and things like that.
And
Yeah,
quantum
yeah.
physics. Yeah,
And
my
quantum physics, which
right.
and actually the show that I have been watching on PBS is called Space Time, and I was watching
Hmm.
something about time dilation this morning, so I'm into all of that kind of stuff. But you also you're a tarot reader, but you also do a lot of other interesting things too. You do sound healing. You're also a Reiki master, and you do amazing yoga nidras on your YouTube channel and on Facebook as well. Like if you struggle with sleeping, definitely check those out, or just struggle with relaxation in general. Tell us a little bit about what yoga nidra is and how you kind of
Ah,
work with that.
Yoga Nidra is the yoga of sleep. It's the yoga of dreams. So, in this practice, we get ourselves into a state called hypnagogia, which is sort of this consciousness level where we vacillate between the waking world and drifting off to sleep. So, the idea is when we're in this state, where it's somewhat hypnotic and
Hmm.
somewhat suggestible. So, I take my group through a series of guided images, and we do scans in the body in order to restore and relax and rejuvenate. So the biggest compliment I can get after a session of this is, you know what, I just had the best sleep of my life. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I love that. And you have like really cool lights and you have a whole setup and it's really fantastic. So if you are
It's
interested,
sparkly.
yeah, definitely check that out. There's some really cool meditations and stuff on your YouTube
Yeah.
channel. But
Sonic sound yoga. Yep.
Sonic Sound Yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually yoga was my introductory, yoga was my gateway. That's
Your
what I
gateway
found.
drug.
Yeah, it was because I was going through a really tough time and I just happened to find so actually a girl found me, a woman found me. I was having like a mental breakdown in a
Mm.
grocery store one day, and I talk about it. I have it. It's actually on Marla Martinson's YouTube channel. And this woman, she walks up to me. She's so sweet. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Okay, well, maybe you should come to this place. It's called the Council of Light Center." And it was like it was like a hippie commune type of thing where like there was yoga classes and like raw foods and like my
Heaven.
first introduction to quantum shamanism and astral journeying and stuff like that. But yeah, so I actually healed a lot of myself and a lot of my life with yoga, and I still do yoga to this day. There was a point where I was like a 3-hour a day yogi, back when I was like, because when you're going through yoga and you're like in the beginning, it's kind of like you have to like punish yourself a little bit by going through the yoga. I know it's supposed to be kind of like relaxing and stuff, but when you're just kind of getting into like the first part of it, it's like, because for me, it was like my teacher was like, let go of the pain, let go of this, let go of this. So it was like, I think in some way it was like her poking and prodding me a little bit just to see like where my limitations were and to see where, okay, this is where how far I think I can go with it. And then dismantling those things, which is going to be what we're going to be talking about today too. It's very much a part of it. But so yeah, yoga was my first gateway into it. And it really taught me actually how to have a good night's sleep, because I never had a good night's sleep before then. And so yoga is always going to be a really important piece of my heart personally.
Oh,
But
yeah.
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 And you have actually worked with a lot of talented people too. Your Muggle job was in advertising and branding, right?
Advertising, branding, and also production. So
And
I would
production.
do, film, TV, commercials. I was working on Strange Angel on CBS, which was so much fun for me. I sort of manifested that. That's a long
Yeah.
story for a blog, but yeah, television, film, commercials, branding, Yeah, I like to swim around in the realm of creativity.
Love that. Yeah, I've always been a creative person too. And I think that's something that a lot of us have in common, especially empaths or highly sensitives or people that are on the road to discover their divine life purpose, because I think it's like we don't have an outlet for creativity. Most of us don't. That isn't really encouraged unless you're really fortunate and privileged and grew up in an environment that allows for that. But I know I definitely wasn't necessarily encouraged to pursue art or something like that. That's not a real job,
No,
that
my
type
dad
of.
wanted me to join the army. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
do 5 a.m. I don't do olive green. I don't do push-ups.
Yeah. Right.
So it was not for me.
My father was an army man too, and he also wanted that for me, and I almost did. That's another story for another time
Yeah.
too. But then, long story short, too long to read. I met my husband, and he convinced me not to go. So
Don't
yeah,
enlist. All right.
yeah. So if you want to get out of the army, meet a boy and run off together. That's kind of how I did it. But today we're going to be talking about something really important on the spiritual journey, and also to creating a business or becoming a professional psychic, or just
Right.
not even if you want to do this as like a full-time job. Like if you just want to be more confident in your psychic abilities, or like just in your life in general, feeling more confident, right? That you're actually living a life that means something. I think that a lot of people, especially with what happened last year with the pandemic and everything, I think there's been like this global thing. Like I know it's been going for a while, but I think it was like somersaulted into, expedited. Like it's just really, really, a lot of people are like, what am I doing with my life? Does this mean anything anymore? Now that people have been home for a while, they've had a taste of what it's like to be with their kids and be around their families and things like that. So getting back to work, I know is going to be really difficult for a lot of people. And I know a lot of people are asking, does my life have purpose? Am I living my divine life purpose?
It's like we didn't have consent, right, for the
We didn't.
situation we found
And you were
ourselves
a
in.
rebel if you did, and you were ostracized if you did.
Yeah, it's weird, this pandemic, I said, you know what, here's a COVID-tunity for a bunch of us.
Yeah.
We have this opportunity to, respond and react. We don't have a choice in the circumstance that's being dealt us. We don't control what card is coming our way, right? But it's up to us to figure out how to play it. And like I said, it's like, yes, there's the crash and burn, but you've got to dust yourself off and you've got to rise again. It's like, think Rocky Balboa, just keep getting up, keep getting up, keep getting up. It's what you have to do.
And so now a lot of people are, they're looking for things that have meaning, but a lot of people are becoming more aware, I think, that being a professional psychic is actually an option. It's actually a legitimate option. these days. And that's a lot of the work that I've been doing for like the last 8 years, and the last 5 or 6 years hardcore, like it's my job, because it is trying to provide some measure of legitimacy to this industry. And so a lot of people are starting to think, okay, well, maybe I can be a professional psychic, but there's so much that goes into that, like not believing that you have psychic abilities or thinking that you're crazy. And then other people in your environment and all of these limiting beliefs that we have. And so our journey to, let's just get rid of the whole business aspect of it for a moment, but just our journey to actually being a confident psychic or believing in our psychic abilities is really a journey full of a lot of doubt. I mean, there's 90% of it is against us and 10% of it is what we make of it. And it's like, because it's such a job title, or it's such a thing that is still really shunned and not really accepted. So it's like, it's not just like our own, like, am I really like seeing this? Is this really real? Am I really talking to my spirit guides, or really talking to angels? Or am I really having a telepathic communication with my cat? All of these little things. And it's like a lot of this imposter syndrome really comes up. And what you really want people to know is that not all of these fears and doubts are actually coming from us internally. Some of them are, but they may actually not be coming from us at all. And that's really interesting, right?
Well, as psychics, right, we're often asked, what are you picking up? Well, the truth is we're actually picking up a lot more than what we're conscious of. I just started to get interested in the study of epigenetics and this idea that there could be chemical trauma imprints that are actually, put upon our DNA and passed from generation to generation. So the truth of the matter is, we ourselves, members of society, all of us walking this planet that's spinning in space, are suffering the sins of our fathers, right? Like think about that old biblical phrase. But
or the traumas of our mothers.
The traumas of our mothers, the pains that go from generation to generation that nobody's pinpointed the origin tale, right? I love my superhero movies. I love my comics. Everyone's got this origin tale that was actually, even though a drama, it was their greatest ally. Like in Buddhism, we talk about making the demon an ally. And when you can see back to the drama and what was inflicted upon you or inflicted upon your predecessors, you can see it, see through it, understand it, and then take that information and integrate it, right? There's a lot of shadow work that light workers have to do. But the truth is, yes, it's like through my research and through so much of what's coming out now, in this field of epigenetics, it's like, oh my gosh, no wonder we're a screwed up race. We've got a lot of BS behind us that we need to clean up before we can move forward.
Yeah.
What are we carrying?
It's like, it's on a physical level, like you say, right? Like there's a physical level to it too. There's also the energetic level. So I have an aunt so first of all, I come from a really messed up side on my father's side. They're all like schizophrenic or bipolar. There's 12 children, 9 or 10 of them are dead at this point. So they've either died to overdose or suicide or something like that. So there's a lot of mental illness on that side. And luckily my aunt, bless her heart, she is an amazing person. She decided to start her healing journey, and she started doing it through is it peyote? I think it's either peyote or ayahuasca. I can't remember which one, but I know she traveled and she actually, I think she traveled to do ayahuasca, and she does her own peyote retreats somewhere in Colorado right now. But I remember when I was starting to come out to my family as like being a professional psychic, and a lot of people were like, yeah, okay, whatever, But my aunt, even though she had been estranged, somehow word got through the grapevine to her, because families talk, and she sought me out, and she actually approached me. She said, I thought she was crazy at this point because I wasn't really that deep into it. Like I was just kind of playing around with it, but I had not really started my own spiritual journey. And she said something like she had started going through these plant ceremonies to make it to where I don't have to suffer like she did. I'd already kind of understood a little bit about like trauma in the DNA, but also there's that energetic trauma, like,
Yes.
she is clearing that, which clears the bloodline, especially the lineage as well. And I remember I thought she was so crazy how she said that she did ayahuasca or something, and then in her mind she transformed into this dragon. And every time she would purge,
Mm.
in real life, she would be blowing fire out of her mouth as a dragon. And she said that every time that she would blow fire out, she would be incinerating these bonds of trauma. And I
How
thought,
powerful.
right? And I was like, this
Wow.
woman is nuts. And it wasn't until I started experimenting with plant journeying that I really understood what was happening. And so, yeah, because you talk a little bit about like also the energetic part of it, like how does that influence?
Well, I'm glad you're bringing up, plants and the power that they have. Gosh, they are such big allies for us. In fact, when Summer of Magic comes up, I think I want to delve into that. I was introduced to the realm of psychedelic shamanism, probably I'd say in my early 20s. And, going back through this time and all the amazing thought leaders and characters and practitioners that I've met that have taken me through my own relationships with these interesting substances, etc. It's just like this does bring up for you a lot of the patterns, again, that we talk about with creativity that we can't see in our waking day-to-day muggle world. But yeah, there's a lot of energy that is somatically stored in different centers in our body. Like, you're talking about these dramas and traumas that she was able to, non-linearly travel to,
Yeah.
and then, examine and destroy. And then this does create a shift in the vibration and frequency that we're emitting.
My life instantaneously got better. Things just started working out. Like I can't, and I just can't I can't explain that. Like my life just did a 180.
The mother
Yeah.
vine is powerful.
Yeah.
The mother, and that's what's interesting about that compound too. It's like when we look at the plant compounds that go into ayahuasca, the vine itself is literally shaped like our DNA, right? It's this double helix shape. And in fact, it was through substances that were of the psychedelic nature that scientist Francis Crick actually had a vision when he was on an LSD trip about the actual nature and structure of DNA. So it was through an altered state of consciousness that we understand so much about our biological conscious world. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a fascinating topic. That's a whole other,
It is.
other
And I don't
podcast
want
in
anybody
itself.
to think that like those are necessary rites of passages. You can still do
No.
all of this without doing all of that. It
Trance
just enhances
dancing,
it.
there's a trance dancing, drumming.
Yeah.
There are so many ways to enter into an altered state of consciousness, but no matter which path you choose up that mountain of self-development, understand that it's not just having the peak experience, it's about the integration and doing the work afterwards. A lot of people, I think, get caught up in the sparkly nature of experience and peak. And don't know what to do with it. And it's not going to do any work for you unless you work with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
preparation was also a huge part of it as well for me too.
Set and setting.
Setting the right environment, being around the right people. I'm a Virgo moon, so everything has to be scrubbed down with bleach and vinegar before I can let myself be in an uncontrolled environment. I have to, that's for me. That's my lesson in control. To learn and to break myself up. But I am so excited to have you here on today's show, Renee. I am so excited that we finally made time to do this. So I would love for you. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you actually got started being a professional psychic, and what got you kind of into the business. What kind of jump-started your spiritual journey? What led you here?
Wow. I always say spirit led me here. When I was a little kid, I saw spirit around me all the time. I grew up in Lancaster County. You have a passion for the Pennsylvania Dutch.
I do.
Magic and folklore, etc. So this area is not too far from Gettysburg, right? And if you're interested in ghost hunting and the paranormal, you know that Gettysburg is such a hot spot, right? South Central PA for hauntings, etc. So, I just thought everyone saw what I saw, right? And I think when we're children, we really do. But as we get older, we're taught that, oh, if you're having visions, or if you're hearing things, oh, well, this is a mental illness. This is schizophrenia. So
Right.
I learned from the great Supreme Stevie Nicks, I keep my visions to myself. Right.
Yeah.
But I got entranced too by this little piece of black silk that my father, who was a local judge and magistrate, okay, army guy, local judge, right?
Yeah.
And there was this black piece of silk that sat in this little kangaroo. If you remember the film Pulp Fiction,
Yeah.
this was like, a prop that was like in a lot of Bruce Willis's scenes. My dad had that kangaroo. And I was like, what's this black piece of silk that I was always playing with? And he would tell me, oh, that's ectoplasm. I'm like, ectoplasm? Really?
Mm.
So it's just like from there, as a little kid, I got interested in the Fox sisters. Right.
Uh-huh.
So while everyone else my age, and, I'm in my mid 50s, I, was watching Red Fox on TV. I'm interested in the Fox sisters. And what I recognized early about them is like during a time where opportunities for women was either you have a good dowry and you're getting married, or,
Yeah.
they're trading you for a couple sheep and goats. You could be a teacher, maybe a school
Nurse,
marm,
maybe.
or a
Yeah.
nurse in maybe, a hospital or whatnot, and it's like these gals were making it for themselves. They were,
They
working
were
with,
feisty.
they were feisty. I
Yeah.
call them the godmothers of, the spiritualist movement,
Mhm.
So I was fascinated by that. So, I really got interested in anything that had to do with paranormal and the unexplained and talking to spirit. I found it so strange that, all of these mystics, okay, they're all right, but they're having the same physical sensations as someone over here that someone else is calling a mental patient. So there was a
Mhm.
real disconnect for me right there. But, I feel like as we get older, we're taught to forget. We're taught to tone down imagination. We're taught to do practical things. Like I
Yeah.
said, dad wanted me in the army and I wanted to run off to art school. So, when I saw my very first tarot card, it was the Three of Swords. And there
Iconic.
was something so visually iconic there. And I felt this is speaking to me, right? Symbol is the secret language of the soul, right? This is silent communication that happens not with words, but
Yeah.
with pictures. So that's sort of what drew me into the realm of tarot. And then, in my teens, I found, this was strange, or maybe it found me, on my school bus. Someone had left a copy of an Edgar Cayce book. So I got
Love
very
him.
interested in, channeling and this medical information from this sleeping prophet. So,
He's
you
the
know,
Akashic Records guy, right?
oh gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So, and people would, here was this guy who's like, middle America and doesn't even really believe in this kind of thing. And all of a sudden,
Catholic as well,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
entities, yeah, a super conservative religious guy,
Yeah.
in his waking hours, but as he would sleep and go into trance, he was being downloaded with information from the Akashic records and
Mhm.
did incredible medical readings on people. So, yeah, so, all of these things just sort of like, got into my consciousness, and I got so interested in consciousness and decided, I wanted to pursue that path. So I was always a student of esoteric arts and got into Hermeticism and, as I said,
Yeah.
psychedelic shamanism. And I was interested in alchemy and Freemasonry. I mean, you can see I'd love to collect my little fezzes back there, But yeah, I just always walked that path and got interested in reading cards and trance dancing. I got interested in drumming, and I would work with people sort of as an esoteric coach and counselor.
Mhm.
But as the COVID pandemic thing came up and threw everything for a loop, I too had my Miss Cleo moment. I know in the
Yeah.
video you talk about your Miss Cleo moment. I
Yeah.
thought, what can I do in my home right now with the skills I have? And I just realized I wasn't as helpless as I was making my crisis out to be at the moment. I had to take a look around at this crash and burn site and figure out what I could do. So,
Mhm.
I found you. I
Mhm.
found your work, etc. And I realized, oh, well, you know what? Now it's time to launch my academy. Now it's time to teach. What can I do to supplement myself? And
Mhm.
I found the lines, you know, I
Yeah.
thought I'll get on the lines and, you know, get to work on making this other dream a reality. But that's pretty much the condensed version of how it all came to be.
Yeah. So, real side tangent, really quickly.
Yeah.
It was really interesting when I learned about the Akashic records, and then I had this like idea, like as you were saying, the epigenetics and like holding on to like our
Mm.
ancestral memories in our DNA, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's also the Akashic records, right? Like being your DNA. We look at it as a library, but what is your DNA? It's a library of stored information, right? So I was like, wow, that is really, really cool. So I love that there's just so many layers to this. Like it just keeps going deeper and deeper. And it's really interesting that
The cosmic onion.
yeah, and like all these correspondences, like you said, you were into Hermetic and Kabbalah and Hermetism and Kabbalah and stuff. And I also am as well. Like I think that's part of the tarot journey because you want to learn more about the Rider-Waite-Smith. And
Oh yeah, I'm always trying to see over your shoulder and look at your shelf
oh,
because
my bookshelf. Yeah.
that's what I do when I meet somebody new. If I go into their home and I don't see a book and a bookshelf, I'm a little concerned, right? It's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I get a lot of comments like, "Can you tell us what's on your bookshelf?" So maybe one day I'll just
we
grab
should
a
have a tour. Give us a
yeah, maybe one day
tour.
I'll just grab a pile and just be like, "Okay, here's 5 of them that I like." But yeah, there's a lot of I have a lot of Sylvia Brown. I
Oh
have a lot
yeah.
of tarot stuff, Rachel Pollack. I have a lot of Llewellyn.
78 degrees of
Yeah,
wisdom,
I
right?
had it.
Oh,
I actually gave that to someone, but as a gift. But I've got some other things in there too, books on demonology and like just a whole bunch of random stuff that I've collected over the years. And in fact, I'm almost a little embarrassed that my collection's not bigger than what it is. I've actually got another little pile starting on the corner here that there's no room for. So I'm looking around my office like I'm growing out of here, like I need a bigger space. So
yeah, my big one's downstairs, but
right.
you
And
know.
so, but I don't like feeling attached from I like having all of my occult stuff in like one general
You can't
area.
Marie Kondo the you know the good stuff. You just
Right.
can't.
This is my life. This is my lifeblood. Like I can't do it,
It does spark joy
It does,
and
it does.
wisdom.
Just looking at all of the books, just opening them up and smelling them and, just connecting and thinking about where I was in my journey when I bought this book and
Mm.
thought it was great. And now I look at it and I'm like, it's really not that great, but I appreciate it because what it was, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and
So
that's something I miss in this digital age, right? You know, like
yeah.
going record shopping but I loved going to bookstores and it wasn't so much about finding the book, it was about a book finding me. And
Yeah,
like
some of my best purchases have been where I've just randomly been in the right place at the right time, and I bought a book and I don't know why I bought it, but then it came in handy and,
it's
so
good. It's good stuff.
yeah,
I love it.
I can get lost. And that was actually the first time I ever found myself in the metaphysical area at all. I was like 11 and I just happened to be me and my cousin were dropped off at this bookstore. I think my mom was gonna go somewhere, pick something up. She's like, here, go look at some books. I'll be right back. So I'm wandering through this giant like multimedia store, like movies and CDs and books and things like that. Like, before there was Amazon, we actually went places and went
Right? Do you
inside and
remember?
looked at things and looked at records, right? And so I just somehow found myself in the metaphysical area. And the first book I saw was called Teen Witch by Silver Ravenwood. I picked that up and that was it. It was game over from there. It was like witchcraft is real. Like I remember being like a little girl and thinking I didn't want to be a princess. I didn't want,
No.
the prince. I
Mm-mm.
really wanted a pony, but I said, you know what? If magic is real, that's all I want. And I would pray, like I would like do the twinkle twinkle little star, being like 7 years old and seeing a star. I hope that there's a book of shadows on my bed when I get home, because I grew up with like Sabrina and Hocus Pocus and all of those like iconic movies where they started witchery started getting really popular, right? And all I didn't want a prince, I didn't want a pony, I just wanted a book of shadows. I finally got it when I was 11 years old, but then I realized, okay, magic is real. And that was one of the coolest experiences that I've ever had.
It was from a magic book that I actually, manifested that job with Strange Angel. I was always
Oh,
into the
really?
lore of Jack Parsons, this guy who is a rocketeer by day and at night a secret occult occultist. And out of nowhere, I got a phone call. Somebody found me on the internet, and, they were putting together this show at CBS about Jack Parsons. And I'm just like, been manifesting this for decades.
I know.
And
Isn't that
they're,
incredible?
but they're on the phone with me, and then I talked to the producer, and he's just like, oh my God, I'm going crazy. I'm trying to get a 1939 edition of the Crowley's Book of Lives and blah, blah. I was like, I could get you in front of that book by 3:00 this afternoon. I know an esoteric library that happens to have that. And so boom. So, it's just like, it's funny how books really can be a bridge bringing, us our wisdom, but it's also brought me jobs. Magic books have brought me jobs. So
yeah, for sure. For sure. We liked, especially as magicians, we like to think we spend so much time learning in the correspondences and the herbs and the candles and all this kind of stuff. But then I think we reach a point where we're like, magic is just going to happen. And whether we can dip in and we can control it, we can focus our intention and we can manifest that way. But there absolutely has to be something orchestrating. There has to be some intelligence to this that we haven't.
Hidden patterns, perhaps, that could be identified by, I don't know. And that's why I working with Amit Goswami, who was in What the Bleep, he was one of my physics professors, the idea that the modern physics are really, able to explain a lot of these, spooky action at a distant, seemingly unrelated things. Well, they actually do have an underlying connection, and are we not all one? Are we not, I always say that my ontological view of the world is a disco ball. It's this one object, but it's got all of these little facets that reflect things at a slightly different trajectory to us all, That's my model.
And so now, I mean, you've been on your spiritual journey for a couple decades now, right?
Lots of decades.
Lots of decades now.
So mid-50s. So, hey.
So you didn't always start out as being super confident in your psychic abilities or being open to this kind of thing, right? So what are some of the things that you really struggled with on your journey to becoming a confident psychic, but also being more willing to kind of align with their divine life purpose and be curious enough to go take that leap of faith and go on that journey?
I was talking a bit about the hero's journey, right? And, first comes in the first stage, the call, but then there's the refusal of the call. It's just like, I refuse to believe that these intuitive hits that came to me so naturally as a child were real and correct. Right. So I felt myself, as time passing, slipping deeper and deeper and deeper into imposter syndrome. Right. So, this idea that I couldn't possibly be correct. I couldn't possibly be right. I couldn't possibly understand. I couldn't be celebrated for my skill set. So when I get into a series of doubt or something that's a block for me or an obstacle, well, like I said, in Buddhism, that tenet of making the demon an ally, it's like, how do you tame this beast? How do you work through it? So I started, working on imposter syndrome on myself. And the result was an ebook that I created about it that I share with folks. It's just, I started to really have doubt because this great forgetting, this great hypnotism that culture puts us through, that we are disconnected from source, that we are disconnected from our divine selves. So I had limiting beliefs about that. And I also had limiting beliefs about being able to allow value exchange to come to me for this side of myself. There was a big period where I freely gave away a lot of my gift to heal and help others, because that was the Mother Teresa thing to do. It was the just thing to do. It was the righteous thing to do. But I soon learned that I became drained when I wasn't fairly exchanging myself for my value. But imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs were huge obstacles on the path to become a prophet with profits.
You talk about something called the blame game.
Yeah, this refusal to take responsibility for adversity in our lives, right?
Mm.
A lot of the backlash that came out after The Secret, right, was
Yeah.
this idea that, well, I did not manifest cancer in my life. I did not manifest, a
The
fire,
spiritual bypassing part of it.
Well, but the thing is, it's just like these things are in our path
Yeah.
for a reason. And for a long time too, I found when I did hit an obstacle or I came up against the wall, I I wasn't taking responsibility for my ability to respond to it, right? I may
Mhm.
not be able to control the circumstance that's happening to me, but gosh, did I sure blame my parents. I blamed systems. I blamed,
Yeah.
the schools. There was a lot of blame happening, and I never really took a moment to look inside what was happening with me.
Mhm.
What part did I play in this coming together? How did this exactly manifest around me? And yeah, I would spend a lot of time blaming. That was a limitation too
Yeah.
towards my spiritual gift, because if my energy is concentrating on somebody else having that level of power and control over myself,
Right.
where am I in this equation? How am I affecting the world? I'm not.
Yeah. Can you think of an example of where maybe you kind of felt that way or what you were going through?
Gosh, I have, I could make a
Pick one,
country
right?
song catalog for all of these kinds of things. You know, I was on the verge of divorce many a year back, right? I had moved out and, was about to start my own life. Husband and I were separated, and I got a phone call one evening that he had been in a motorcycle accident. My husband and I
Mm.
are both bikers. We both like to ride. Um, and it turned out, even though we were separating, we had become friends again. And he had, fixed my bike up for a charity love ride by Jay Leno would host every year, right? So it's like, here I am being called to help somebody who I'm trying to separate from.
Right.
And, this crisis came up, and, I was just not wanting to accept what was going on. And we ended up losing, because of the medical bills, the home that we owned together and all of this stuff. And it just trickled down and trickled down. And I was at the point where it's just like, oh my God, what is left for me to do? What is there to start from? You know, but having everything stripped away from me at such a great level, took me down to my core. And I realized, wow, it is really up to me and my relationship to source and my relationships to spirit to pick myself back up. So I started getting myself back into meditation, and
Mm.
getting myself back into connection, and getting myself back into listening for the voices to direct me, for seeing the visions of what I could do to correct all this. So I made myself a list of goals. I was like, I will own property again within 5 years. But you know what? With the right intention and the right attention and steps with it, I was able to make that happen for myself in 3 years instead of the 5. So did I go off topic there with my
No, no,
drama
no,
and my trauma?
no,
but
no,
but it's
it
just
all
like I
makes
had
perfect
to
sense.
pull it together. I had to pull it together. I didn't have a
Yeah.
choice.
My mind was like, I was trying to think of a situation where I kind of dealt with something similarly, that was probably perhaps one of the most like significant. I remember right after I had joined that like little hippie commune
Mm.
ashram thing, I had developed skin cancer
Oh dear.
unexpectedly. And when I was going up there, and I was going up there, and I would be going through their raw vegan classes, and they had convinced me that my diet was the reason I had skin cancer,
Mm.
and that they could help me with the raw foods and things like that. And I'm forever grateful. I mean that totally worked out, just not in the way that I thought it was going to work out.
Mm.
I
Okay.
learned to like vegetables and things like that.
They're
And
your
then
friend.
yes, right. And so I remember that I was kind of at like this tug of war between what my doctors were telling me
Mm.
and what my ashram was telling me, right? And like being in that caught in between that paradox state where you're trying to move away from something, but you keep getting pushed toward, you keep getting pushed towards it anyways, right? And so I remember being in that situation where I was blaming. It was when I was at the ashram, I was blaming the doctors because they were incompetent. When I
Right.
was at the doctors, I was blaming the ashram because I'm too gullible and I didn't I was taking all this information in. And coming back to the blame game, it wasn't because it obviously wasn't because I smoked 1 to 2 pack of cigarettes a day. It wasn't because I sunbathed my whole life living in Arizona. It wasn't because I hit up the tanning beds every few months to maintain my, like it wasn't because of anything I did, right? And we look at like these things that happen to us as and looking at all these other reasons why it happens to us, and not necessarily because of our own choices. And that's a really big, I think, part of just moving forward towards your divine life purpose is kind of like what you were saying, is that first we kind of have to realize our culpability in, what's kind of going on, and not like you say, like, I didn't manifest cancer. I didn't intentionally manifest that, but it still happened. And it wasn't the way that some spiritual bypassing people might suggest that it was, but it definitely was in the fact that it actually didn't matter how it manifested. I had to figure it out from there.
Right.
You understand what I mean?
I do. Like with that situation I was illustrating with my, breakup with my husband. In the end, I realized that all of the things that were driving me nuts about him
Mhm.
were actually my own shadow characteristics being reflected back to me. Right.
Mhm.
So through this crisis, I was able to look in that mirror and see a true reflection rather than a story I was telling myself. Right. So
Yeah.
it's just like I understood that the responsibility in the dissolution of this partnership wasn't so much about blaming the other. It was about reframing it in a story where I actually was the anti-hero.
Mhm.
Okay. I
Yeah,
was the villain in the case, and I had to come to terms with that and correct that, you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really big step in maturity. I think it's a really big step in just getting outside of our own personal selves, and just it's that surrender, that art of surrender.
Surrender, Dorothy.
Yeah.
Surrender.
The tornado's gonna kind of gonna come get you anyways, right?
I love that story too. I actually did in my master's program a big, piece about that. Frank Baum, he was a theosophist, right?
Yeah.
And he had a strong female influence in his life from his mother. So, there was a lot of spiritual wisdom in the book, The Wizard of Oz. And
Yeah,
of course, yeah, it's also there in the stories, but yeah, good
absolutely.
metaphor.
Good metaphor. So you also talk about, so that kind of leads us to fear, because when we're in the blame game, we're kind of in a fear. When you're in fear, you kind of go in this deer in headlights, and you're like not really sure what's true anymore, right? So you have
Truth
an
is
acronym
obscured.
for fear. So what's your acronym?
Fear, false evidence appearing real. Right?
Mhm.
It's just like we can tell ourselves that these shadows are so much bigger than they actually are. We were just talking about the Wizard of Oz, right?
Mhm.
Here was this ominous, godlike voice, that's come bellowing. Well, it's just like when you go behind the curtain, right? Is it
Yeah.
this giant thing to be feared, or is it actually like this tiny thing that we have the ability to overcome? What are these stories that we tell ourselves with fear, the fear of the unknown, right?
Mhm.
This again happens in script writing and the hero's journey, right? Fear is, the reason why so many horror and suspense films are successful, right?
Right.
There's an adrenaline rush that we get from allowing ourselves to become addicted to fear, from allowing ourselves to be addicted to false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like we have to sort of like, slay these monsters because we've told ourselves some terrible stories about what might happen. You
Mhm.
know what? And you know what? This is robbing you of your peace today. Having anxiety and fear about something that may never come to fruition, but you're putting so much of your energy there. Are you co manifesting it? Are you
Mhm.
actually trying to bring about this dark thing when you could actually be basking in the light and having a good
Mhm.
time today? So yeah, fear is something that holds a lot of us back. I think a lot of us in the magical community and who are spiritual advisors, etc., who are healers, it's just like we're so good at helping other people pass their fear blocks,
Mhm.
but we haven't cleaned up our own backyard.
Mhm.
you know does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because you enter your spiritual journey with one set of fears,
Mm.
and then you work through those and you think you've conquered them, and then oh no. There's even more, because at each new level there's like new different insecurities that
Mm.
you couldn't even have imagined because you weren't living that expression yet, and there are each new like time that you level up and you go like to that next level, there's just always these things that you just don't know about, that can kind of creep up. And yeah, and so you talk about like for you, how you would invest like 80 hours into a production
Oh yeah.
project, no
Sure.
problem, but you really had some trouble around fear of investing that time in yourself and your own business, and making someone else rich, having letting helping someone else live their divine life purpose of
Oh my
being,
gosh. How many Porsches have I bought other people through the sweat of my brows? How
exactly.
many Malibu beachfront properties do directors and producers have because I saved their butt with a creative solution,
Yeah.
right? It's just like we talk about the hero's journey, but this is also the fool's journey in the major
Yeah.
arcana,
Isn't it?
right?
Yeah.
So as I go along and I meet the magician and I meet the empress, but I get stuck at the hierophant, I get stuck in these
Yeah.
spiritual, systems and institutions and whatnot, or it doesn't even have to be spiritual. It can be any sort of like God that entertainment has created. But yeah, we can definitely, get stuck on that path along the way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, but that's where it brings me back to tarot and the symbolism there. It's just like, how can I get past this guardian at the gate? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And so if someone has never experienced that, let's say there's people listening right now that are psychic or intuitive or highly
Mm,
sensitive, but they don't read tarot cards, so they might not be as familiar with that, like going through those rites of
that
passages,
metaphor,
that
right?
initiation, as we are. But it does come up a lot in life in general. So it's something that's so deeply embedded in the subconscious, and the collective unconscious, right? That these stories and these figures. So what would, like, for someone that doesn't understand tarot cards or exactly what we're talking about right now, what would be maybe like a rite of passage that they would go through that maybe wouldn't be like necessarily so obviously connected to tarot cards or something like that?
Mm, that is a good question. You know what?
For me, what I think about is like people who are leaving the church. That's like the
mm,
Hierophant reversed, right? Like we understand that, like,
absolutely.
or leaving their established religious worldview to seek more of a spiritual journey, right?
Oh yeah, because what was handed to you, what was presented to you, you saw the falsehood, just like,
Hmm.
we talked about again, Wizard of Oz and this idea that, what you were presented doesn't fit anymore.
Right.
So you have to step outside the bounds, and there's a point of self-initiation, right?
Hmm.
Letting go of what's been handed to you, and you realize that this too is false,
Hmm.
right? False evidence, false beliefs. But yeah, getting away from a system of belief, right?
Hmm.
It's like we talked earlier about the separation of source. We talked about you distrusting the doctors. There's
Yeah.
something in the Western mind that separates body from spirit, that the idea that our thoughts live in our brain as
Hmm.
opposed to them emanating through the body. We're finally learning in medical science that the gut is sort of like the second brain. I have a gut feeling about this.
Yeah.
But this journey that we all go on, whether you're using the tarot for a metaphor or not, fits that hero's journey that I talk about a lot in my course. So it's just like, what you're handed, what circumstances are put upon you, whether it's a belief system from the church or a school or, some local club that you belong to that no longer suits your story. We're climbing up this spiritual ladder. We have the opportunity to ascend every day. And as we do that, as we move up and we have a higher vantage point, right, as we go through these spiritual initiations, right,
Yeah.
Our point of view is shifted. Right. So what looked like something that made sense at this level, when you're looking at it from up here, it just isn't the same vision. It's just not the same point of view. So as you shift and change, right, a lot of these old systems no longer serve you to your higher good. And you've got to break away through that and break through that and move on to something new. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So initiations, I think of what you're trying to say too, is also that initiations can just be as simple as facing some type of fear or discomfort. Right. And so you actually have a lot of situations in your life where you've done that, like you've gotten into yoga. Like you said, you were a motorcyclist. Like that would be scary, like getting on a motorcycle. And then, you and I are both into snakes, and you said that you got a pet snake, and you shared with me once upon a time about this story about your serpent's kiss and things like that. So what are some other things like that, like some other situations where you've kind of had to, or what are some things that you've done that you faced your fears? Like, I imagine you don't just, like me, like I have snakes too. Like we don't just get snakes because we think they're cute and floofy. I think a lot of us get into that sort of thing because we want to face our fears, right? Like,
oh gosh, yeah.
chasing that adrenaline rush and knowing that we're really uncomfortable because I don't know about you, but once you start actually facing your fears, you actually, instead of being addicted to fear, you become addicted to facing your fears. And then you become really like, I'm going to challenge this, and I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to overcome this. And so it becomes more like a game. What do you think?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's an opposite extreme to that, right? You can become an adrenaline junkie from facing fears and put yourself in a lot of dangerous situations. But, you bring up the snake, you bring up this serpent energy thing. Yeah. And, we have this Western Judeo-Christian background that infiltrates our culture, that here you've got this lovely little animal that in nature is the key to balance in a lot of populations, right?
And an important, an 80 million year old important integral piece to our ecosystems. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's just like, and my dad, right, was so afraid of snakes and stay away from these things. But, that was something I did to face a fear. My husband had been a reptile keeper for a long time. So it's like I had this sort of like lurking, fear in the back of my head. So actually taking on the responsibility for this gentle life. My first one was a red-tailed boa constrictor, and they're just like the sweetest, most gentle
puppy
things
dogs,
ever.
Yeah.
Right. Not like the reticulated python that gave me its kiss later. Yeah. We'll talk about that some other time. But this idea of facing fears through these simple acts, it's learning to live with a bit of discomfort. You talked about yoga, right? And we talk about in yoga, recognizing the pain points and whether they're beneficial for us and they're going to help us stretch. They're going to help us grow. They're going to help us.
Yeah, you say it more eloquently than I do. Yes.
Right? Is this going to be an expansive experience, or is this going to be a restrictive experience, right? Yeah. So it's just like, is this something that's going to allow me to have growth? And beyond growth is lasting change, right? Yeah. So through facing these fears, through these tiny little acts, whether it is, taking on a certain pet, and that's a rite of passage too of responsibility,
right.
You decided you don't want to have children, but you're going to have fur babies, etc. Yeah. Right. But there's still a level of responsibility that goes with that and taking that on. So there are so many little acts that we can do that initiate us to the next level. And for some people, they really do like, the high magic or the social clubs, or, I've always been a bit more solitary myself, but same. This idea of, being initiated into the sisterhood or the brotherhood or into the craft, I think are important symbolic acts for ourselves, because it's a sense of spiritual alchemy, whether
Mhm.
it's, like you said, taking on a pet or being initiated in your group. This is all just hearkening back to our own ascension journey, like I said, up that ladder on what rung we're on, you know? So it's like as we
Yeah.
rise up, we learn a little bit more of ourselves, and a lot of that BS just sort of falls away, it clears out.
I think one initiatory path that a lot of people don't really consider is hiring life coaches like you and me. That is
Mentorship. Okay,
yes.
so this is a part of that hero's journey, right?
Mhm.
You know, I think about the
The hermit,
Karate
right?
Kid, right? Well, it's the hermit, and you know, you have to climb the mountain, right?
Mhm.
That's back at midnight movies. You know, if I didn't go see Rocky Horror, I'd go see Led Zeppelin's The Song Remains the Same. And I think of like the Jimmy Page, you know, you know, climbing the mountain so he can get
Mhm.
up to the hermit. But when he turns around, the hermit is himself, you know?
Yes.
So it's like, you know, to have accountability, you know? So yeah, we all could use a Mr. Miyagi. We all could use the benefit of having a mentor, a teacher who is able to direct and steer us. You know, I don't have to burn my hand on the stove to know it's hot
Mhm.
if I've got an effective teacher who can help harness my abilities and guide me in the right direction. You know, we don't
And knows
have
good for first aid when you
and
decide to
knows
do it
good.
anyway.
Oh, look what I did. You know, but yeah, that's another rite of passage is, I think, coming to the conclusion that, you know what, we don't have all the answers at our fingertips. We
Yeah.
don't know exactly, you know, how to best serve others if we can't see certain behavior patterns in ourselves. You know, one of
Mhm.
the things I appreciate about the relationship I have with you and the courses I've taken with you is the stuff that I'm turning a blind eye to because I'm too close to it.
Mm.
You are able to see and identify. And I enjoy doing that with people in everything from a conversation to going through some formal exercises. You know,
Mhm.
it's really wonderful to be able, like I said, to hold the mirror for others. It's a bit of an honor, you know.
It really is. Yeah. And so that's always an option, especially if you don't have any society or institution that you really feel like you belong with,
Mm.
or if you're just kind of spinning your wheels. And one of my favorite quotes is that you don't know what you don't know, so you should never feel guilty about not knowing a way to heal yourself, or a way to do something, or a strategy to manifest something, right?
Oh
And
gosh, yeah.
yeah, and that's where coaches really come into play, and why we're so valuable. And a lot of my audience are tarot readers that are psychic readers that want to actually become spiritual life coaches. And so this is incredibly valuable to you guys as well, because I always tell people, how do you expect to become a spiritual life coach if you've never hired a spiritual, if you've never been on the client side of it before? And I think the best coaches out there are the people that have first been a client, first been a customer, and have sought and have that motivation within themselves to seek that out. What do you think about that?
I agree. You know, it's just like this idea of accountability,
Yeah.
right? You know, having a partnership with a coach that, you know, makes sure that you are actually showing up and doing what I shouldn't say that they make sure of it. You know, it's just like in the end, it is up to the individual to do the work, but we really do serve as guides.
Hmm.
And you know, I just keep going back to that word accountability. You know, it's just like, if you are a solitary kind of person and you don't have the ability in your family, your clan, your community, etc., to even have conversations about woo-woo kind of things
Right.
without receiving judgment, it's good to have somebody who has walked that path. And if you're looking to counsel others, etc., it's just like you can learn a lot about how to develop your relationship with clients, your relationship with sitters, you know, your relationship with querents,
Hmm.
with this coaching relationship. You know,
Hmm.
it's just like, I'll point to the time I've spent with you, you know, identifying, oh, well, here's where this is falling short, and why. Or, you know what, you're saying these words, if you reframe them this way, how would this story be told?
Mhm.
And it's just like, that is invaluable. That is invaluable.
And if you're too shy, like I know hiring a coach or working with someone one-on-one is a really big, scary step for a lot of people. Like
Mm.
some people just can't even wrap their brain around doing that. Like they still are struggling with the self-worth of feeling worthy to even make that investment. But I think it's incredible that, people like us, especially now in the digital age, you can actually receive coaching from people without ever working with them one-on-one. For example, like you have some courses available on your academy. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about the academy, kind of what it stands for, like why you set this up, and kind of what is your intention with it?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I'm so attracted to the mythology of the phoenix, and the phoenix shows up not only in Greek mythology, but it's in ancient Jewish stories, and we see it in Chinese culture, etc. But this idea that we all have the ability, when something blocks us or something takes us down, to rise from the ashes. As magical people, we still get stuck. We still have obstacles. We still have fear. We, as light workers, as I said, have so much shadow work that needs to be attended to. So,
And it's integral that you do, because
yes.
the world is going to drain you dry if you don't. So it's
Mhm.
really for your health and your benefit to do that for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I find in my conversations with people that come to me for psychic services or esoteric counseling, etc., it's like I feel like I don't know where I'm going or what I should be doing with this. So the idea of creating a course to discover your life purpose. People ask about passion, is that more important than purpose, etc. In fact, I think somebody wrote on the Facebook page about, what's the difference between passion and purpose.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things with the courses that I'm developing in the academy, is to teach that difference. I mean, a passion is sort of like the what, the impulse, the thing that gets us excited and
Right.
breathing. But the purpose is the why.
Mhm.
The purpose is, the what seems to be more about you and your own fulfillment, and what gets your adrenaline and heart racing, etc. But the purpose, the why, is about a bigger picture and the impact that we can have serving others. So my goal with creating the academy and the life purpose course and the other things that I have in development right now are addressing the fact that we, as thought leaders, we as spiritual leaders, etc., need tools and tips and tricks, not only to serve ourselves and do our own healing, but to be effective healers for others,
Mhm.
right? To be
Mhm.
effective leaders for others. So I just realized, all of us have had these stories of loss. All of us have had these crash and
Yeah.
burn scenarios, and it's time to rise again. So I'm raising it up with the Spirit Phoenix Academy.
I love it. I absolutely
Yeah.
love it. So I have some questions before we go. We're going to talk a little bit more about the course in just a few
Hmm.
moments. I want to make sure that we're going to, like you touched on some Q&As. I want to make sure that we're going to have some time to do some Q&A as well.
Hmm.
So if you do have a question, please go ahead and get it into the comment box now, and we'll circle back around to it. But I just wanted to kind of wrap up, what we've been talking about as far as the struggles, overcoming these obstacles to being on the path to purposeful living, because that's what we're talking about today. Is why, Renee, why do you think that it is such a struggle for people to find their divine life purpose?
Oh my gosh. We have so many roadblocks. I talked earlier about my dad not wanting me to go to art school,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which was my natural gift, ability, and talent. It was the thing in my life that as a child I could get lost in for hours and hours and hours, and experience timelessness, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I was told that that wasn't a good idea, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of people around us telling us stories about limitation. And why do they do that? Well, they've been limited themselves. They have been reduced themselves. They have had reductive language around their passions, around their purpose. So we lose our way. We
Mm-hmm.
lose our direction. Some of us are so reduced by the stories around us, right, that other people are putting upon us, that we can't possibly believe that we could have a positive, lasting effect as leaders,
Mm-hmm.
as teachers, right? Your life purpose might not include teaching per se, and
Mm-hmm.
that's totally fine. A lot of us in this group are interested in sharing with others that way, but people get lost on the way because other people oftentimes are telling them that they're not good enough, that they're not smart enough, and we result with limiting beliefs that make us feel like there might be something wrong with us.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
Right. And so, we were talking about passion versus purpose. So this is something an example I've given before, and
Mm.
maybe you'll agree with this or maybe not. But so when I think of passion versus purpose, I think of someone who believes that it's their passion is being a mother. They want to be a stay-at-home
Hmm.
mom. Maybe they want to work on the hotlines for fun money to buy a purse or to buy a Disney vacation for their kids once a year or something.
Shoes, girl.
Shoes. I mean, there's
Shoes.
always things to buy. Am I right?
Oh,
And the
yeah.
world just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so maybe their passion is being a stay-at-home mom, but maybe the difference
That's
is,
wonderful.
yeah, and but the difference is their divine life purpose is raising really highly sensitive children, compassionate children that had the luxury of being able to be at home with their mother, and being able to witness their mother doing something like that. They go on to help people at a later date.
There's
Or
a butterfly effect to
yeah,
that kind of story, right?
right.
You
Yeah, so that's like one example, especially because I know a lot of people that are listening are probably like, I don't know if I want to do this professionally, but it's you can have a divine life purpose, and it could be something that you kind of indirectly influence the world with, or even indirectly get paid doing. Like there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that you can do, a lot of ways that you can manifest your divine life purpose, even if you don't want to start your business, right? There's
Right.
divine life purpose is really like it's knowing kind of like your place in the world and how you're making the world a better place, kind of,
Well,
right?
a life purpose doesn't have to equal a career,
Right.
right? A life purpose doesn't have to have a paycheck attached to it.
Hmm.
This is some of the stuff that I like to explore within the course materials. It's just like, perhaps what you're talking about for your purpose might resonate in the realm of volunteer work
Right.
or nonprofit work. Philanthropy, and people think philanthropy has to mean, that you've got this mansion and this expansive bank account. But the thing is, it's just like, there is a psychology to tithing and,
Hmm.
giving up a little bit of what you have to benefit others. And that can grow exponentially. So, and while being a side hustle psychic is also a great thing, you might decide that this isn't your professional realm at all. You're right about that. But
Hmm.
what are things that you can do? What are tenets that exist in these systems of learning that you can use to affect change in your neighborhood? Maybe it's, I do some work with the charity Action Against Hunger.
Hmm.
And, money is gathered up and, food goes out to people in, places where it's not accessible. They can't run down to Whole Foods or 7-Eleven.
Right.
They don't have DoorDash, it's just like, but, that's part of my purpose as well is, affecting change that way. So you may find through a course like this that has nothing to do with reading tarot cards or doing divination.
Hmm.
You might find that it's a completely different path for you.
It's just the career becomes the vehicle to get you to your divine life purpose, right?
Value
Yeah,
exchange is a
value exchange,
wonderful thing, right?
isn't it?
Being able to pay the bills, being able to, have a roof over your head from,
Yeah.
having a purpose that is beneficial.
When you're not bamboozled by your environment, you have time to think about things, and you can think a little clearer, and you can see where things are maybe like what you said, fear, false evidence
Mm,
appearing real. So
false evidence
what
appearing
actually
real.
has to change for people to start being on their journey to discovering their divine life purpose? Or even if you are on that journey right now and you still haven't really figured out that you think you've really got there. So what are some things that people can course correct and change in what they're doing right now?
Mm. It's interesting because I realized as I was doing this course and putting these materials together that a lot of it came back to the obstacles. A
Mm,
lot of it came back to the blocks. So it was about identifying where we're getting stuck. So I also have another course that will be released in just a couple weeks about overcoming these obstacles
That's right.
and figuring out. It's just like, oh, is this really where I'm being blocked? Sometimes, as again, you're just so close to your situation that you're not seeing that, oh, there is a way around this. There is a way to like smash and slay this. I use video game analogies a lot in my course materials as well.
Me too. I
Because,
do too. Fellow gamer here for sure.
absolutely. Yeah. I worked at Electronic Arts for a while. I loved being in an environment coming up with, these pathways and stories that you have to move through. And it's just like, well, when you get down, this particular path, what are the possibilities? What are the risks to assess here? But yeah, it's just like, figuring out ways to get over these obstacles in my own life and through stories, through my peers, etc., and bringing that all together for people. It's just like, oh, you might see your own metaphor there, or you might see your own literal story unfolding. And it's just like, well, it worked for this person. It worked for that person. I bet that would work for me too. I'm going to give it a try,
So what are the essential truths that you kind of will leave us with today? So if anybody's feeling not really that confident that they are on track to find their divine life purpose, or they think they've kind of found it a little bit, so what are the essential truths that you want to make sure that everybody knows and understands about their journey to living a purposeful life?
Well, a big one for us is, like I said, even as light workers, we still have shadows. It's like when we turn on a light, what happens, right? You can even see it back there. It's like there are shadows on that wall. So even though we think we're living on purpose, even though we think we're doing the right things, we're on the right path, there are still bits of darkness and shadow that are created. And, we got to do a little bit of cleaning up there, right?
Yeah.
It's just like we want that kind of like perfect illumination. So yeah, taking care of the shadow work is a huge one. Another one, I think is we talked a bit about accountability, right? Having partnership along the way. We talked about the Wizard of Oz. Did Dorothy go down the yellow brick road alone, or did she have partnership with different characters who along the way imparted their own brand of wisdom, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's just
It
like,
was probably least about the wizard of all.
it was
Right.
less about the destination
Yeah.
and more about the path on the way too. So, that's the thing. We're all, coming onto this planet, this spinning rock in space. We're all eventually going to leave. But in between, it's the people that we meet, the people that we encounter, and the lasting change that we make because of that and those experiences. So yeah, accountability and partnership on the path to purpose is something I think we all could use. We all need.
I agree. I love
Yeah.
that. So let's go ahead and take some questions if you don't mind. So
Let's
we
see what's
have
over here.
Tripti Sohani says, as I am moving towards 5D, I experience the ascension. Things and people are falling apart in this journey. I would like to know, how does it help me going through ascension in my material and practical world?
I adore Tripti. I know who she is. She's a
Oh,
great
okay.
lady. I know who
Excellent.
she is.
Yay. Okay.
Ooh, that's a good one. I talked about this ladder, right? And having a different point of view. That's a very light question, right? And I just talked about like the shadows and whatnot. Unless light is directly overhead, like at high noon, or directly over the crown chakra, if you will. We want to get a little esoteric with this. As we enter the light and we climb through this ascension, our point of view and our position is changing. But a lot of the people around us are not actually on the same rung with us. They are not in the same situation. They are dealing with the previous definition and what they perceive to be the incarnation of you. And as that changes, right?
Yeah.
They are creating resistance. They are resisting the change they see in you because they're not ready to make it in themselves as of yet. So this is a side effect of good medicine, right? The side effect is as we change spiritually, a lot of the people in our lives may want to block us
Yeah.
because they don't believe in themselves that they can make the same transformative journey, right?
And that
And they get
rejection can
afraid.
really mess with
The
you,
rejection
right?
mess, but they feel rejected themselves. They feel
Yeah.
you're leaving them and they're resistant, but that's okay. There are some people that are in our lives forever. There are some people that are in our lives for a day, but oftentimes I refer to these people not as soulmates or twin flames. We
Hmm.
talk about that a lot, but I call these people fate mates.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were here for a certain reason, but now we're moving on. And you know what? Bless them and
Hmm.
bless the fact that they are even feeling that resistance, because you know what? It just may prompt them to make change later. But if it
That's
doesn't,
exactly it. Because whenever I still lose people. People still walk
mm,
out for various reasons.
yeah.
But and I used to take it really personal, and I used to do the dreaded thing of chasing people, chasing out. Why did you leave me? What is wrong with me? And
Running and
I
chasing, running
running
and
into
chasing.
and I really stopped doing that because I sat down and asked myself, do I want to be the sane person in this relationship? Do I want to be the person that when because most people are going to come back. That's just been my experience. At some point, they come back in some way, shape, or form, indirectly or directly. Like they want to be there. They become, oh, what have you been up to now? Like, because they're going through some transition of their own. Like I like a really real world example is our ex-boyfriends that they're leaving their current spouse or something, and they're like, hey, what's up in your life? Something like that. And so people always have a habit of kind of coming back around. And I
Like
always think,
cosmic whack-a-moles at the
yeah. And I'm like,
carnival.
do I want to be the better person in this
Mm,
situation, and being the better person for me has meant to stop chasing, stop running, stop internalizing why people leave or why things happen. Like, some people say like they've been fired from their job, or they've been let go once people found out that they're into psychic stuff, or
mhm,
ostracized from their family, or there's a lot of these what we call in psychology, I'm sure catastrophic beliefs, right? Like the
mhm.
worst possible scenario that could happen. And it's very real that sometimes these worst case scenarios do happen. And that's something that's just a reality. And chances are it's not going to happen that way. And chances are
No.
these catastrophic beliefs aren't going to happen. But there's always that slight chance it will,
It's like, I go back to the Four Noble Truths.
Right.
All of life is, suffering. Attachment is suffering, and feeling attached to the drama that your light and shift and change and transformation may be creating in them. It's just
Yeah.
like you have to look at that. It's like, well, am I really creating this, or are they? And how much
Mm-hmm.
responsibility and attachment do I have to their pain and suffering? Now, that doesn't mean that we aren't compassionate people. That doesn't
Right.
mean we aren't empathetic people. But at the same time, we have to realize that paths will diverge. And we
Yeah.
have to be okay with that. We have to be okay. We have to be strong, and we have to be ready to move on if a relationship turns toxic and is no longer serving our highest good.
Yeah.
It's just like, I use that ladder metaphor often. Do we want to reach that hand out and be drugged back down,
Mm-hmm.
or is it a better use of our energy? I don't want to have to go against gravity to pull someone up, but if they're
Exactly.
willing to take the steps themselves and join me, I'm still open,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm still approachable.
Yeah, just leaving it open-ended, I think, has brought me a lot of peace.
Mm,
Accepting what is, but leaving it open-ended, knowing that I don't know how things are going to end up,
mm-mm,
and just being open to that possibility. So
absolutely.
Therese Castro, she says, my question is, what's the difference between a passion and a purpose? Does your purpose have to be one thing, or can it involve more than one thing? Also, I would like for you to touch on Lynn Heisler asks, do you think it's possible for life purpose to shift and or change?
Oh gosh, yeah. You know what? I kind of look at this like I look at human relationships, right? You
Mhm.
might be monogamous and have the same partner your whole life and be so super satisfied.
Right.
Or even enjoy complaining about it, which is also a level of satisfaction. Or you
Mm-hmm.
might be a serial monogamist, right? You may have passions that you explore one by one, like maybe for 3 years, you're really into like, Thai cooking, and you somehow
Mm-hmm.
make that into a way where you've got like a soup kitchen that you're feeding some homeless people or whatever. And it turns, that passion
You even
turns
have a
into
famous
purpose.
Thai recipe that you've created now, you're really into it.
Right. But it's just like you're doing this one particular thing in a linear fashion, and then you might sort of drop that and go on to something else. Right. So,
Maybe your passion's still cooking, but maybe it's just not Thai food anymore.
right. Maybe you've moved on to, Vietnamese,
Right.
but you've got this sort of like linear fashion in dealing with your passions and purpose by exploring them on a one by one basis. And then there are other people that are poly. Right. The poly party. I kind of identify with that as far as passion and purpose, because I have always been drawn to juggling multiple careers. It's just like while I'm working that muggle job, I'm also maybe involved in a study group about, how to do certain things relating the tarot to the Kabbalah, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like we have passion and purpose. It doesn't have to be one thing at one time, like many many books and gurus out there might lead you to believe, and maybe that works with them, but it doesn't resonate
it's a very
with you.
oversimplified way to look at it.
Absolutely. So, and remember, I felt like the big definition that separated passion from purpose is, again, the passion is that what? It's that impulse. It's the thing that makes us feel good. It might be that adrenaline thing. It's that thing that makes the emotional response happen and we're attracted to and drawn to. But the purpose is the why. The purpose is, taking that passion, harnessing it, and putting it into practice, right? It's sort of like the theory versus practice. And when passion is mixed with practice, there's a sweet spot there. And in that sweet spot, we can affect change not only for ourselves, but for others, So that's sort of how I feel about the passion versus purpose dynamic.
Yeah. And Janie Graham says, does your life purpose change throughout your life depending on your decisions and what path you're on? And how do you know if it's really your life purpose?
As I go back, like I said, I'm in my mid 50s now, and I do a lot of inventory and go back over what different purposes I've had, what different passions I've explored. But now looking back, I see there's a common thread in all of them. It's just like, as I go back through that, it's just like this idea of being able to identify patterns and be able to visualize what other people can't see. So whether I'm making a storyboard, for a commercial, or I'm working with a client, there are certain elements that are laid out in front of me, and I can identify where those patterns are, right? So even though, in my 20s, my purpose may have been one thing, and my passion may have been one thing, whereas like now it's something else, that linear purpose exists throughout. So you may find that even though they're wearing different masks, costumes, and carrying different scripts, that these different passions and these different purposes may actually be of the same ilk. They might actually be, if you reduce them down, they might all be on the same theme.
I love that.
The same mark.
Excellent.
It might surprise you.
Brianna Elton says, I've been wondering if our North Node has an impact on our message and story. So I was like, I do know astrology a little bit. Like I knew it a lot better back in the day. But so I was like, okay, I'll have to go refresh my memory on this.
Isn't that dealing with our fate, sort of?
Yeah, so I went to Astro Style, and then I went to Bustle just to get some background information. It says the North Node represents our karmic paths and the lessons that we came here to learn, or the language that we are learning to speak. The South Node reveals the challenges and the gifts we bring in from previous lifetimes. Our South Node represents where we're coming from, what we're bringing with us into this life, That includes the lessons of our past lives, all the gifts and qualities that you've already mastered, plus your DNA, as we talked about earlier. And then your North Node, on the other hand, represents the path that you are growing into, your specific dharma for this life. And you said your North Node is in Aries, and I looked mine up. I'm also a North Node Aries, South Node Libra. So we're the same when it comes to that.
That explains putting our head down and getting it done.
Yeah. So again, so her question is if our North Node has an impact on our message in our story. So I think, yeah. Right?
Where we've been can oftentimes dictate where we're headed, right? You know, it's like going back into the past. And, you know, this is something that I know a lot of people in our group, you know, have a shamanic vibe to this idea of returning into the past, or going back into our own underworld, you know, going into this lower world to see where we've been. I think this echoes too into a bit of what we were talking about with the epigenetics, you know. So yes, we can learn a lot from where we've been in the past. And you know, I talked earlier about the baggage that comes from that, and whether it's ours or not. But yeah, we have created our own karma. But isn't this the beautiful thing about conscious entities that we are, is we now have the ability to make a choice, so that our futures unfold even more strongly than our past. So yeah, it's just like with an Aries kind of North Node, it's like, was I super selfish and self-oriented that now in this life
codependent, I think of Libra as the RX version of Libra. Yeah.
You know, it's just like, do I now need to be selfless and more giving in order to balance that, you know, karmic equation? So yeah, I would agree that would have quite a bit to do with it. Yeah. I'm not the most well-versed astrologist.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fun. I think you're an astrologist if you like to look at the stars. I think you're an astrologist. That's the simplification of it. Yeah. Heidi Barton Jacobs says, even if you have found yours, divine life purpose, and it was hard and messy and a difficult process, how do you recommend best helping others who want to do the same?
We talked a lot about light and shadow, and you know what? Our spiritual journeys, our lives, it's messy work, right? I think
I call it getting into the muck, getting into the dark, the most fertile mud that you could ever, you know, get into. That would grow anything anywhere.
I love a good mud mask and a mud bath. You know,
me
it's
too.
like take me to the spa. I want to dive into that.
I like to just get my hands in mud too and just get dirty. It's fun.
You know, well, you know what? You can shape a lot of things there. You can sculpt a lot of things in the mud.
I remember making mud pies. I mean, yeah.
You know, there's a hot springs not too far from me, and that's my favorite thing, is like getting with a bunch of my gal pals and jumping into the mud bath and, you know, sculpting all these things on our heads. But getting into the mud, getting into the muck, as you were saying, I think is a sense of authenticity that we can bring to the table. One of the reasons I think I was originally attracted to your programs and whatnot and finding you on YouTube is you weren't afraid to be authentic. You weren't afraid to take a look at the shadows and the darkness and the negative things that had happened. I think there are a lot of teachers and coaches out there that might sort of like spiritually whitewash everything. Like, it's all good. It's blah, blah, blah. Well, the truth is it's not all.
I'm completely healed. Good. I never believe anybody that says I'm completely healed. I'm sorry. You're forever on a healing journey. There's always something more. Like the whole idea of I'm completely healed now. Okay.
But not being afraid to show the dirty work, not being afraid to show like the dark processes that you've gone through. You know, it's like other people might be sweeping that stuff under the rug. Being authentic and open and sharing those parts of your journey are what
you know where it comes from.
Are you're going to connect with people on a whole other level when you're willing to show them the messy bits.
It's like there's that breaking point. Everybody's going to go through it. It's a rite of passage where you refuse to feel shamed for the things that have happened to you. You have no control. Even if you were somewhat culpable to some things that have happened to you, you don't know. I mean, there's unconscious programs that are being run all the time on people that they don't
Oh my
know that,
gosh.
and so
Coming from
yes,
the advertising world, yes, I
yeah.
can tell you there's
So it's like,
silent communication and influence everywhere.
so it's taking responsibility, but also saying, you know what? I don't have to take complete responsibility for that because I didn't know. I do believe at the end of the day we are all innocent to some degree. There's an
Mm.
innocence about us, and I think that's a really good point where I started becoming more confident in being and sharing my stories and talking about the things that have happened, because I'm sure that it downgrades me in some way. Like, I'm not going to be like the super famous coach, because they talk about awesome things that happen to them all the time and never really talk about the negative things. But I
With lots
have
of Instagrammable moments. Remember
right,
when
right.
everybody was there with their latte? It's just like, okay.
Yeah, but they talk about drinking the Mai Tai on the beach, but they don't talk about how they got into a big fight with their husband that morning and they're not talking and he's sleeping on the couch and she's not sure if now they're getting divorced, but their Mai Tai looks excellent on the beach of Maui. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's always been a point for me. And I think that giving ourselves permission to share our stories, and you're really big on that, because the next course that you're releasing is actually about rewriting your stories,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Rise again, overcoming obstacles and rewrite your success story.
Yeah.
We are the everyday authors of our own stories. As we've touched upon it here several times in our conversation. We can't be responsible for every circumstance that befalls us,
Mhm.
but we can take responsibility for what is blocking us. So we have to decide, are we going to go under? Are we going to go around? Are we going to rise above?
Right.
So I talk a lot about ascension and climbing that ladder and rising above. And the truth is that these things that seem so big when we're down in the muck, when we're looking at it from a
Yeah.
bird's eye higher perspective and approaching it from a higher level of consciousness, we're able to bypass them and overcome, whether and sometimes we have obstacles that maybe we want to be doing something and living an authentic life in Alaska, but you're in North Carolina. It's just like,
Right.
does where you live in your home actually present a block or an obstacle? Could it be your job? Could it be even a partner? Sometimes we attach ourselves to the wrong person, or sometimes the person we're attached to has not gone through a level of transformation. They haven't been on a journey yet. And will they become an obstacle on your path of purpose and living your divine life, living your psychic life, or whichever way you decide to go? Will they be a block? And so this has some techniques and proven techniques to get around that, to examine that. Ask yourself these questions. It's like, is every piece on my personal chessboard in alignment with my strategy to win the game? So yeah, it's about looking at these blocks, identifying them, and then the techniques to break through them. I'm not giving you my divorce attorney's name though, because
Okay.
but you know what? But I was at that brink too, where I was having to look at my partnerships, and I felt like I was being blocked. But as I told you in the end, I discovered that they were my own shadow characteristics. So it's interesting going through these journeys, and that's the point of putting these courses together and having an accountability coach, because it's like you can really look at that, because sometimes we can be a bit skewed,
Yeah.
block
And it's
ourselves.
scary to go alone. So bring a friend,
Bring a
right?
friend. Yeah, bring the Tin Man. Bring your dog.
Whoever you
Pack a
need to.
lunch.
So you actually have a couple of free gifts for us.
I do. I talked a little bit earlier about the obstacle, the block that a lot of us have, called imposter syndrome. So, a lot of the way that I deal with things is when I get blocked by something, sometimes I just start writing about it. So I put together this great ebook on imposter syndrome, getting into what it is.
Mhm.
I will be putting up some links here in just a moment
I
that
just
will
stuck
get
it
you
up
there.
and I pinned it to the top, so people should be able to grab that. Just copy it. Just have that on your copy, so when you're done here, you can just paste it into your browser.
Right on, right on. So this is a great little book with a 21-day action guide that you can go through to start breaking down this like wall that you've built around yourself in believing that, you know, you aren't really who you are. You know, we get past this like idea that you shouldn't possibly be able to charge money for your true value. You know, it's just
Right.
like, am I going to be found out? Someone knows I'm an imposter. You know, it's just like, this is a real thing that I think a lot of us spiritual entrepreneurs suffer with
Can I tell
on
you
a daily basis.
something?
What's that? What?
I've been doing this full time for 8 years. Never once has someone said, "You're an imposter" to me.
Never
Never once
one.
says
Who
I
are you?
never once says it actually happened.
It's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, that's something we certainly struggle with.
Yeah.
And then another gift that I'd love to share with you guys, you know, we talk about purpose, we talk about, you know, obstacles and blocks, but I also put together another guide that is like 30 ways in 30 days to inject more meaning into the everyday life. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like, you know, what were you doing last Tuesday? Oh, I don't remember. What'd you have for lunch? Oh, I don't remember. But you know, it's like maybe last Thursday you went like skydiving with some friends and like, you know, brought this incredible picnic lunch. You had this great peak experience. It's just like the idea of bringing meaning into your everyday life. Meaning means that we're creating memories. And when we're creating memories, we have things that we're doing what? On purpose, right? There's a sense of consciousness that we bring to our everyday life instead of just droning through it. So this is about making life more fulfilling in 30 days. So I definitely just want to share these like gifts with you guys because they come from my heart. They come from my path. And, you know, here I am trying to like, you know, gain more wisdom and fulfillment every day. It's just like, I found these things work for me. You know, maybe they'll work for you, you know,
Yeah.
maybe they won't, but if they do, great. But it's, you know what? It's free.
Yeah.
Take them. Enjoy.
Right.
Enjoy.
I love that. So, one of my big things that is a core part of my coaching philosophy is the way to attain success is to see every situation as a win-win situation, to always be the victor in the situation, even when you lose, right? So it sounds like that's kind of like what some of these free gifts will do is they'll help you kind of retrain your mindset to, even when things aren't exactly going my way, being able to course correct in my mindset and say, you know what, actually, I'm winning because I'm getting a lesson out of this, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. You know, it's just like sometimes you find learning at these like these junctures that you didn't even expect that a lesson would grow out of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just like, oh, there's a little nugget I can take with me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, you don't even expect sometimes that there's going to be an educational result, you know, that you
Right.
can integrate into your own world. It's like I'm going to start
Absolutely.
using that.
Right. So, Renee, thank you so much for being here today. It was absolutely a pleasure to speak with you
Oh,
and have
thanks.
you
Thanks for
share.
having me.
If you are listening and you're struggling with actualizing your divine life purpose, but you know you're here for big things and you need some help and support along the way, there's no shame in needing help. And in fact, that's our whole industry here. That's what we are trying to get across to people is that it's okay. It's more than okay to ask for help. It's actually encouraged to ask for help. And you actually have a special offer right now. You have a course that you just released called Discover Your Divine Life Purpose with Renee Lynn is now available. And I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that course. What is it about? Who is it for? And how can we enroll in that?
Well, one of the big things that I like to get into the course is the idea of flow, right? We talk about creative flow, but you know, it really appears, I think, in the realm of like, you know, athletics. You know, it's like, especially in basketball, right? It's
Yeah.
just like you just get in that flow and you're making the next basket, the next basket, the next basket, you know, as and even as psychics too, it's just like I'll say, you know, Michael Jordan didn't make every basket, but he sure made a lot of them, right? You
Mhm.
know, about getting into flow. So the course examines, you know, what sort of like creative cues are there in your life that get you into that mind and headspace where time seems either to stand still or be stretched. You know, there's a lot of things that happen when we get ourselves into a flow state that we're really, you know, doing excellent things and having
Mhm.
excellent results. So it talks about getting into flow. The course also goes into the realm of visualizations. I have a whole section too, where, you know, one of the assignments is creating a vision board about living your purpose and what that really looks like. And it's like when we start, I always say, people say seeing is believing. I believe believing is seeing,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
having
No, for real.
visualization.
Yeah, visualization. I mean, the manifestation is what, like 90%. If you can visualize it, then you're 90% of the way there, right?
Absolutely. If you can see it, you can be it. So, little reminders throughout the course of having positive visualization for yourself on your path. Another thing that we do is we dig a little bit deep into you to figure out where are your natural talents? What are you meant to do? I mean, some people have artistic abilities, some people have musical abilities, some people are natural communicators, other people are not so much. So it's like we look at characteristics, we look at natural abilities, we look at talents to help discern, well, you've got this one, and this one. Well, would that come to fruition in this type of path versus another? So, we look at that. And then the other thing that's important in this course is getting into the hero's journey. As I said, looking at the stages of the hero's journey, from the call to the mentorship appearing to, the trials, and then returning with the elixir after the battle and coming back into the journey. From the beginning to the end, and having the ability to affect change. So like I said, we explore the fact that this is something that is a narrative structure in our literature, our film, and our entertainment, but it also is so true in our own lives. So I bring a bit of that, Joseph Campbell-y kind of mythos, the monomyth, to life in the course. But, I got to say too, as I was doing this, I came to realize a lot of people have the obstacles and blocks. So that's where that second course was born out of this, that it'll be there. But, it's a way to gain understanding from your failures. It's a way to find your way down the path to your goals and to be able to serve others. So, if you're a magical person, if you're a spiritual entrepreneur, we talked about the fact that we still get stuck. So I feel this course is for you if you feel like maybe you're being held back, or worse, if you feel like you're kind of moving backwards because of the obstacles and lack of awareness about your directions and talents,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
and
I
you
would
have
love
a special
to say it's
price
for
on
everybody,
it too,
but
right
it's
now
not
too.
for everybody. It's for people who are stuck. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I decided to honor the folks in our communities, the empaths, the healers, the magical folks, the spiritual advisors, by, taking the next maybe month and a half and keeping a low tuition rate. Some of my mini courses I'm going to be starting that are going to be, as low as $49, but the life
so
purpose,
accessible.
it's accessible. It's accessible. That was one of my blocks too. I am a conference junkie. I'm a seminar junkie. I'm a workshop junkie. And, sometimes there is a barrier to entry on these paths, right? And it's just like, oh gosh, that financial gatekeeper. So I just wanted to, present some courses that were accessible and easy on the wallet, and that makes it easier
but high
to
value.
get. But high value, absolutely.
That's what we're all about here.
Absolutely. Hey, I love a sale.
I do too. I'm always buying. I mean, I have so much stuff that I've never even taken, but some of the best courses I've ever bought have been like $10 Udemy courses, or like $100 on sale courses that they do on Black Fridays or something like that,
Sure. But another tenet, I'm sure you can attest to this too, as people move along, and this isn't even about my academy, but it's just a little tidbit of wisdom for the folks in the group. You may find that people will become more willing to pay you your worth when you recognize it in others. And I found like it was, the more I would invest in courses, the more learning I had, but therefore more value was coming to me. More financial gifts would be coming to me equal to what I was willing to invest.
One of the first things I do because we all have these moments of doubt, like about, is the business going to continue? Am I still going to make 5 to 10K this month? Or am I going to have it, like, God forbid I have like a 1K month or something, stuff like that. So I still go through those things. And the very first thing that I do when I start feeling that way is I go buy a bunch of crap from other people that are in the similar industry, because I feel like that's the way, because I want to spread that energy out, that there's always business available, because I know energetically it's going to come back, and I feel better once I do that, because I know there's other people that do that thing that as well. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense. I was just looking over here to see some other comments. Everyone's so sweet.
I
Someone
know.
said we made them miss their corn snake.
Oh yeah, Skylar had a corn snake. Yeah. We will have a link for that. I highly recommend you guys get on that special pricing, especially if this resonated with you today. Once upon a time, I started out doing divine life purpose coaching. That was a long time ago for me. I don't do that anymore. I have a lot of people that ask me about it, that are in those kind of beginning stages where they're just trying to understand their gifts, really. And I am not able to do that. So I'm really grateful that Renee is stepping into that role, because now I have someone that I trust that I can send people to. And I know there's a lot of you out there. So we will have this link for you guys. So check back. Also, if
I
you
just typed it in. I was writing the word gift as you said it. That was a synchronicity.
And if you can't figure out where the links are, just message Renee or message me, and we'll get you where you need to go. Okay. So
I'm
don't
super
worry.
accessible. I'm around.
Yeah. We don't bite.
Well, sometimes,
but yeah. So how can we stay in touch with you, Renee? Where are you at online?
You know what? I will paste up too all of my fun little links so you can stay in the loop with me. I've got a YouTube channel. I've got to get back into making more videos. I've been a bit absent because I got to tell you guys, launching an academy is a bit of an arduous journey, right? So I haven't been as visible. I still do my yoga nidra every Wednesday night with folks as a free gift too. That's another free gift. I provide that for everyone. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook. I've got a Facebook group that you can also join if you're interested. I'm always, lurking in your groups as well. And what a wonderful community, right? That we have to.
Yeah, I mean, they're the reason why I get out of bed, really, because they're just really awesome people, and it's just great to finally have that sense of community, And so if you're new here, it is available. I mean, you have to show up and you have to try to be a part of things, but it is available. We have a really supportive community, and that just goes on to breed more supportive communities. So I'm positive that your community for your academy is just amazing, and it's going to keep getting even more amazing. And
thank you for your inspiration and your leadership. I'm grateful. I feel like a good product of the systems that you put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. So you came through the course last year, and so you did your official graduation in December, and
I moved my tassel. Yeah.
Yes, you did. You did. And now you're launching your academy. So that's just like, we're on track. We're on target. That's what happens when, you are around the right people, you're around the supportive people, when you invest in yourself, or, whether through.
You become an average of maybe the 5 people that you interact with most. And
Absolutely.
Again, that ladder metaphor, are the people that you're around bringing you up, or are they bringing you down? If you're the smartest person in the room, get in a new room.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But now that we've had our chat and this is launched, I can turn my attention to the Summer of Magic. And I just want to encourage other students that are watching this video, either if you're in the live broadcast or the replay, don't be afraid. Get yourself out there, share the knowledge that you have, share the magic that you have this summer.
More than you think you do. Things that are easy.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. The things that are normal and easy and interesting, but somewhat uninteresting to the other people that you're probably dealing with in your life are very interesting to other people that just need a little bit of help to find you, and they can't find you if you're not putting yourself out there.
Get visible. Be visible.
Thanks you for Renee for coming. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, or you have questions for Renee, go ahead and message her, or you can leave a comment.
Stick them in the comments.
Yeah, leave a comment. And over the next week or so, I'm sure Renee will come in for a couple of moments at a time here and there over the next week and just kind of catch up with comments and answer any questions that you guys might have.
That's right. That's right. Well, you know what, guys? Thank you so much. And thank you, Christina, for the opportunity to come in and share today. And gosh, I'm just so darn tickled that we got to do this finally.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you in the next training. Bye.